Welcome to Indian time. As you all know, this is powwow season and everybody's probably recuperating between weekends of powwow, and I hope that you're enjoying yourself so far. And today I welcome you again back to the show, and I hope that you continue to watch our program, we'll continue to learn about the different things that are culturally relevant to us as Salish Kootenai people. I would like to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming events, I guess, as far as the Culture Committee is concerned. I'll be taking some elders down to visit with some of the elders from the Nez Perce people to meet at Lolo and talk about the Lolo Trail. Their students or summer workers, summer youth are cleaning the trail or getting that, as far as the brush, getting that cleared away. And they've invited some of the elders from both the Salish and the Nez Perce to go down and have a barbecue one evening and to visit and to discuss some of the future programs of the Nez Perce National Forest and the Lolo National Forest. We had our language camp already this year. We're looking forward to possibly of doing a winter camp, maybe a 2 or 3 day winter camp, so that we as a culture committee can do things and share things that normally can't do in the summertime. So we're looking forward to setting something up with that. I'd also like to thank all the programs that supported us in our last language culture camp. The donations came in just at the right time to cover all of our teachers, all of our material, and to feed the people and the students that were there. And I want to thank you again for those donations and for the assistance. I believe that our survival depends a lot on those language and culture camps to retain the value of who we are as Salish people. Also, I'd like to remind people that the Flathead Nation will be hosting the International Game Society in the summer of 2001. So a lot of those activities and the games will be shinny games, dart, bow and arrow games. I think they have one they call running and screaming game. For those of you that have good lungs, this would be a good one for you. So you need to start practicing and getting ready for these games, because as an athlete it takes a lot of energy and a lot of work to get in shape to compete in these things, and hopefully that we can go and compete with other tribes and come away with some wins. Also, I'd like to talk about later about the projects I guess we have coming up at the Culture Committee. One of those will be, I'll be talking about the History and Place Name Project, the book that we're working on, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But first of all, I think I'd like to address my people, my Salish people, to let you know how I feel and the importance of the things that we're doing in the language and in the culture. Tlupisen kuskedlich vextunum yetl watch des lemti luchlesia luchin in bochbachot is kumemeye. Kumetake kestum kan milul kestskul kesqilmi keskudlum netli shaytlu ken yopiaut luken in kudmis luqultmushin kekeschinim kekesqilmi qul kesxusikhult Chmin nemel shemek etskhem kelsisi twilj kelyoyo twilj lusia lukes kusikhult lukes kusqelih Kumetake kestum kan mi kesen auchtelt kes kupselt kes lukes melt sion nunums Käsen tkomsels puusts luk en godmis luk emotion. Luk make all shitl yatlwa lesia luk käst god. Kame takke käsen sleptens zum lu ke emotion. Luk ep opbehot lust gods. Natli qulshayu yatlwa ke ke yopiaut yatlwa buaputi käst chinim. والكاب أخبخوت والقيخول جموشن وكالله جميل شمكة تخيكاس قيتلمي ملونا كسولت وكال خويلتيس لوكاس وسيخولت كما تاكاس جمشقن مي باسيا كاس أولقشيخلت كاس كوبلت لونات ننقص بانش لوكالي لوكال كاس تسكول والكاس وسيخولت والكان بالقالتن كما تلتي كوبن تملو كاس وسيخولت كسيونون مسلو بالقالتس عكاس نعوقم سلو كتلو بخوتس كسكوب مسلو كاس وسيخولت كما يخسلو السياسلو كاس نكس قالي خمسلو نكاس الكولتيتس لو نكس بانس تلاش كاك لاو إيشلو تستشات لاش كاكس تلوخت كاس كمادليان ساسيا كاكس تيخوي كما كاس خاست متلونك كاس أنا لونا هو جاي كتشليب جاتات اسوي ساعات سيمي ميك بنشي كتونا نايش كاكس كاكل يامي كاكل قلو كاليونون ملوسيا لوس قلو كما ونا شيء لوكال كشوش والكما يونك اليو تويلش السيسي تويلش لخد الأسياء لونا كقيسمي نمخوي كاليو تويلش نمخوي كالسيسي تويلش كاس هام لوكاب أخبخوت كاس ساوم لوكاب أخبخوت يتلخوا كان لامت لوك اسكودلم لوك انو يواوش تنسلوك السياء كما شيء ونك السيسي تويلش. Today I would like to start our program, I guess. I talked about before we was going to start and using the phrase in Salish for each show. Today's phrase will be, I think we'll try to learn that. I'll say that a couple of times. Now you say that. Soon we will be picking huckleberries. So learn that, and I'll test you next time we have the show on. With that, I think I'd like to now go into the discussion of our project, what we call the History and Place Name Book. And I want to introduce a gentleman here that's been with the program with us at the Salish Culture Committee for about 9 years now. He started out with a project I know that you're all familiar with. It's called Place of Falling Waters. He worked with Roy Big Crane and Frank Tyro and SKC Media to come up with this this project, and I'll let Tom talk about that a little more. But Tom also has been with SKC and done other things with SKC. So with that, I'd like to introduce Tom, who has been with as a consultant with us now, working on the History Place Name Book, and I'll let Tom explain that to you. So I'd like to introduce Tom Smith.
Okay, thanks, Tony. It's an honor to be here and talk a little bit about the History Project and the Place Name Project. I guess maybe a good way to begin might be just to say that one of the links between Place the Falling Waters and this project is that both of them are really efforts to make the voice of the elders and of the tribal people themselves the authorities in the history. and Place of Falling Waters as a 3-part video on the history of aspects of the history of the reservation. Really, the core of it is the interviews with the elders and their own oral history. And in these projects that I've had the pleasure to help contribute to at the Culture Committee, it's really taking the same approach. And I think my sense is that the staff at the Culture Committee, and even more importantly the elders themselves, have recognized that the kids in the schools and also just the general public have had very little access until now to tribal perspective on Salish and Pend d'Oreille history, and in particular the words themselves, the stories themselves of the elders. And so under your direction and before you under Clarence Woodcock's direction, I've been trying to help compile a history of the Salish and Pend d'Oreille people, that the core of which will be these stories told by the elders. And that really, in one way or another, this project has been in the works ever since the Culture Committee started 25 years ago. The first thing, as I understand it, that you guys did was really just, you had the wisdom to sit down with the elders and just let the tape recorders run. And they were so generous in sharing their stories, many of which had not really been brought out for a long time. And the result is this priceless treasury of recorded oral history at the Culture Committee, probably one of the finest tribal oral history collections in the country. And so what then happened over the succeeding years was those tapes were painstakingly translated, and in more recent years those transcripts have been computerized. And so we're really working, taking excerpts from those, we organize them, we index them, and those direct words of the elders are really forming the core of this work. And I know one of the hopes is that this will make its way into the schools, so the kids that have needed something like this for so many years will finally have a chance to do it, to utilize something like this. I think, we have the cover of the book, and maybe it'd be a good time now to show that. And on the cover of the book, you'll see that it's the working title is Voices of the Salish, and then the subtitle, A Tribal History of the Salish and Pend d'Oreille People. And for the cover illustration, we've chosen a wonderful picture of a feast held somewhere down in the Jocko Valley area in the late 30s. And almost everyone seated around for that feast has been identified by the elders today. And it's a great image of community, of tribal community, of people sharing their stories, talking and visiting. And that's really the spirit in which this whole book is being undertaken. So the elders really like having that picture on the cover. The scope of the book will really range all the way from the coyote stories up to the present day, and even thinking about the future. And as a result, we've split it into 2 volumes. And each of these volumes will combine the oral histories being told by the elders, vast excerpts from a vast amount of material gathered from government archives, the records of the Indian agents and of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and so on the reservation. Very rich material. Much of that has never been seen either. And the third element in each of these books are going to be the photographs. And the Culture Committee has also a very rich collection of photographs. And like the stories from the elders, one of the kinds of photographs that we're trying to make use of as much as possible are, in a sense, the rarest kind of photographs in the collection, which are pictures of tribal members by tribal members. For instance, the Culture Committee has in its collection the Tellier photographs, taken mostly in the teens and 20s by Albert Tellier. And there are many other collections of photographs of the Culture Committee taken by tribal members. So again, it's a glimpse through a tribal perspective of this history. And so my role, as much as anything, is really just to organize and compile these things, but the experts in this history, again, are the elders themselves. And one of the key things in this whole project, too, is that, of course, most of these stories were told by the elders in the Salish language. And it's a lot of work, but one of the things that we've been trying to do, to the extent possible, is to render the stories in the book in a bilingual format, Salish on one side of the page and English on the other. And we have an example of that too, maybe we could show on the screen right now, a story told by Pete Beaverhead. And we'll also in a moment play an excerpt of the tape where he tells a story. And this is another aspect of the book that we hope we can work out with whoever the publisher ends up being. But many books you'll see today have a CD inside the back flap of the book. And what we're hoping to do is to take all the excerpts that are finally make their way into the book and put them in order onto that CD so that readers will be able to listen to the elders as they read the book. And in this way, the book will serve not only to teach the history, but also help teach the language and hopefully be a contribution that way. Maybe we can just play a little bit of that excerpt from Pete. So that was a tape of Pete Beaverhead, who's one of course, the richest sources of oral history on the tapes at the Culture Committee, a Padre elder who passed away actually only 6 months or so after the Culture Committee started. So I think, Tony, you've said often that that it was one of the most fortunate things that the Culture Committee started when he did, because he really contributed a great, rich collection of oral history.
Right. And as I said earlier, I think that he was so willing to share. He had so much information that he wanted to give us. And I think he must have known that he wasn't going to be around much longer, because in that period of time from about January or a little after January to that same August when he passed away, he was one of the main contributors. He covered the ethnobotany. He talked about wars between tribes. He talked about place names of on the reservation, Aboriginal territory, and he just gave us so much in that short period of time.
Yeah, so he really is figuring prominently in this project. And although one of the strengths of the project too, I think, is that it also includes quite a broad array of elders. And that's one of the things I think that makes it a pretty unique project, pretty unparalleled among other tribal histories. There are some other tribal histories that include 1 or 2 elders that are relied on almost exclusively, but this one is pretty unique in emerging from kind of a much broader cross-section of the tribal community. And I think one of the reasons that is the case here, that it's possible, is that this tribal institution of a culture committee was established. That was so important to the whole possibility of this project happening. And one of the things I might mention too is that there's a lot of people in the tribal community here that are pretty excited about the project and looking forward to its completion. Also, it's received a fair bit of outside recognition of its importance in the form of the grants that we've gotten to support it. One from the National Archives, the grant-making arm of the National Archives, and also one that we just completed that was one of the largest grants ever given by the Montana Committee for the Humanities. So we've really appreciated that support that they've given to the project. I might say a word just about the scope of the book, and I think we can show the table of contents on the screen now. This is a condensed table of contents on one page, but you can see that we've divided the book into 2 volumes. Volume 1 goes from the beginning, from the creation stories up to the arrival of the Black Robes, the Jesuit missionaries. And there are 9 chapters planned in that first volume, going from the coyote stories to some of the oldest stories in the oral tradition about when there was one great Salish nation before it split into different tribes. The 3rd chapter on place names, and we'll get back to that in a minute, but that's the chapter that really led to the other half of this project, the Place Names Project, because as we were working on that, it became clear that we'd never really systematically worked through all that information on the Salish and Pandre relationship to the land, the names of places, and the traditional use of the Aboriginal territory. From there, it goes up through the traditional way of life, the warriors and the stories of intertribal wars, the arrival of epidemics of horses and guns, the early encounters with non-Indians, including the Lewis and Clark expedition, the intensification of intertribal war in the 19th century as guns came into the area and other factors, and then the missionaries. So even at 500 or 600 pages, when you consider the bilingual format, you know, the virtue of that is that we have the actual words of the elders on the page, and it'll help teach the language. But one of the drawbacks, in a sense, is that you only get half as much content on a page. And so even at 600 pages, we're just really able to go into a certain degree of depth on each of those aspects of the history, and especially when you think about the photographs playing a prominent role in this book. And so then volume 2, about the same length, goes from the Hellgate Treaty up to the present. It begins with the treaty, the whole conflict over sovereignty between the 1850s and the 1880s, up through the railroad being built through the reservation. There's then a chapter on the Salish in the Bitterroot Valley and the struggle over removal. That we've developed into a pamphlet too that's available at the Culture Committee, and we can show that on the screen. That pamphlet is now available. Some of this material, as we've gone along, we've developed into shorter materials that are already available. Another one is there's a pamphlet on the relationship with the buffalo and the traditional use of the buffalo. And a third piece of work on tribal history that we already have available is on the Salish and the Lewis and Clark expedition, that encounter. Anyway, back to volume 2 in the book. It just goes up through the 19th century, a very complicated and interesting period of the history that the elders have really given us a lot of information on. We don't have time to go into too much detail on it, but everything from the tragedy in the Swan Valley in 1908, the opening of the reservation, to non-Indians in 1910 and the way that was resisted. One of the things we're going to use in the book quite a bit are letters from Sam Resurrection, who was a tribal leader in the early 20th century and was one of the fiercest opponents of the opening of the reservation to non-Indians and defender of tribal rights. And so that'll be rich material. Anyway, that's just a brief overview of the book. I might just say a word or two about the Place Names book that, as I say, emerged from the 3rd chapter. We can show that cover on the screen now. And Tony, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the title. I might mess up. But could you say the title of the Place Names text?
The place names,
yeah.
That's the voice. Where are you at?
On the 3rd chapter there in volume 1.
Oh, there. That's pretty good. Go ahead, try it.
Okay.
Very good. Very good.
I didn't end up saying my socks are blue or something.
No, okay. You've learned a lot in the past 9 years.
I'm just a little baby yet, but anyway, this book has been a real pleasure to work with. We've done a lot of research on it. We're dealing with the whole Aboriginal territory. We have over 400 place names in the Salish language now. We've gone through the oral histories. We've gone out in the field with the elders to confirm these things. We've gone through the ethnographies and so on. So that's going to be a really exciting project. And I'll just show on the screen briefly right now just one picture from one of the place names, the name for Butte, Sintapke.
Right.
Okay. That's a fascinating place name. It means a place where they shot bull trout in the head with bows and arrows. And Sam Resurrection actually reenacted doing that in a picture taken in the 1920s, and you can see that on the screen there. But I guess I better cut it short, but that'll be another exciting piece of work to come out and should closely follow the history project.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tom. I think that maybe the possibility of bringing you back another time maybe to do a little more. So as you can see by the table of contents that of what Tom just explained is really part of our history. I think that we have a tendency to forget what it does, what this project does, and it tells us is it reestablishes our existence, it reaffirms our existence as Salish people in all of these areas. And as our elders said, if it doesn't have a name, it's neither used or we've never been there. So as long as it has a name, it's been used, and we've been there. So a lot of this history, a lot of the things that are going to come out will reestablish our existence in these areas for thousands of years that we've been here. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and close her up here. And I want to thank you again for joining us on our Indian time. Again, I'd like to remind you for the phrase of the show, and that is Tlesh'el Exqolewit Stasha. Tlesh'el Exqolewit Stasha. Soon we will be picking huckleberries. And as forgot to mention earlier that our elders are reviewing all the work that we've done on the history and the place name project, and so nothing goes beyond unless they are satisfied with what we get. So I hope you join us again next show. I hope to see you all here. Continue to watch our show, and we'll try to bring you more news, more information as we go along. Rest schat pesia.